What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. For those of you who are new, my name's Sam Clark and you're watching One Life Cars. Today you join me with a completely new car to the channel. Join me with the Alfa Romeo Mito, and today I'm going to show you guys how to remove and replace the rear suspension springs. Now things corrode on the Alfas and the Fiats. The springs are quite a common one. They rust up on the back especially because they're completely exposed to the elements, and this has come up as an advisory on the MOT, so I think it's time to do them before they snap. So today I'm going to show you guys how to prop the car up, get the old suspension springs off and replace them with new ones. So stay tuned to find out how to remove and replace the rear suspension springs on the Alfa Romeo Mito. Alright guys, the Alfa Romeo Mito rear spring replacement. So first thing you want to do is chock the front wheels and make sure the car's left in gear, as I've done here. As we're going to be jacking the back up and you don't want it to roll forward now and fall on you. So I think it's best to do a side at a time. You can jack up the whole back end if you want, it don't make any odds, but make sure you put some axle stands or something underneath. Don't just leave it on the jack. I will be propping this properly before I start working. But once you've got it jacked up and you've got good access to the underneath, we can have a look at the bit we're actually replacing, which is this spring here and that spring there, just next to the exhaust box. That rust is a rusted heat shield, dead common on these. They just corrode to absolute nothing, just a sheer metal really. But anyway, as you can see here, I don't know if you can tell on the camera, it's quite corroded at the top, to the point where they've put it on the MOT as an advisory. You could get away with leaving it for a bit, but is it worth the risk for a spring to snap on you? If it happens at speed, you will know about it. So there's a couple of ways you can do this, but I think the easiest way for the purpose of my tutorials and keeping it simple is to jack the car up nice and high. Yeah, so as you can see here, you've got the shock connected to the bottom of this plate which the spring sat on. So think if we jack the car up nice and high, we undo this bolt here and let the spring sag as much as it can, we should give ourselves enough leeway to get the new spring in. And then you're thinking, how do we compress the new spring to get this bolt back in? Well, that's where the second jack comes in. If you've got two jacks, this can make your life a lot easier. Because what we're going to do is we're going to put the second jack under here and jack the new spring back up to put this back on. Obviously right now it's all under compression, that spring's tight. So we'll put a jack under this, take the pressure of the spring, pull this bolt out, pull the shock out the way, let that drop a bit and get the spring out. So thinking about this guys, I should have mentioned it to start with, we're going to have to do both sides together as all this is connected with that bar there. It'll all drop together. So most of you aren't going to have three jacks to hand, even I've not. So what you're going to do is use your one jack, jack up one side, prop it with some axle stands, take the jack down, go and jack up the other side, prop it again. So you've not got the jack in use at all, then you've got a free jack then, both sides are propped up, and then we can use this jack to tension the suspension, to get the new spring in, or to hold the tension while we get the old spring out. So, I'll get the car propped up properly, get what tools we need for this, and show you guys how. Stay tuned. Alright guys, so as you can see I've got the car propped up over there off the axle so both back wheels can dangle down, and you want to get a 14mm socket on this bolt here, bit rusty and it's very tight, and I've just got an adjustable on the nut on the other side to hold it in place. And basically you want to get this bolt out to release the shock absorber, and hopefully we can dangle the wheel enough to pull the spring out and put the new one in. So let's have a look at the new springs. Sack springs, weren't cheap, about 100 quid each these. Got a bit of discount on them, but still not cheap for a bit of metal. Not much to them, it is literally just a spring. Yeah, that's the new one. So it should be fairly simple, it's just that the main bolt for this shock absorber is quite tight. And you just want to make sure you've not got the car jacked up on the axle. And that jack's not actually tight, that's just there for when we put the new spring in, but we'll get to that. so the back wheels can dangle sort of freely. Because if there's pressure on the shock and the spring, it's going to be very, very tight, and then if you do release it, it's going to spring out on you. So yeah, get this bolt out, release that shock absorber, and we should be able to put enough slack on the back wheel. I'm hoping you can do a side at a time, because the car will sort of, you know, it can tilt side to side, so it should still dangle a bit on this side even though the other one's still on. If not, we'll have to take both back shocks off, and then the old back will sort of sit loosely, and then we can get the springs out. And don't jack it up dead high. I'm not sure how much you can just let the back wheels drop and dangle, so I've just done it a little bit so they won't go further than that before the wheels hit the ground anyway, just so we've got enough free play to pull the spring out. So anyway, I'll get this bolt out and let you know how it goes. So I've disconnected both sides, the bottom of the shocks, so the back end's dropped now. Both wheels are on the floor, which relieves a lot of the tension off the spring. Now, I'm not sure how easy they are still going to be to get off, but yeah, they're quite loose already, so I might have to jack the car up a little bit more just to give yourself a bit more ground clearance, so it drops just enough to pop it off the top, and you'll be able to just pull them out then. And hopefully we'll just be able to put the new ones in, and that's where the jacks come in, having a spare jack, so we can jack under here to push the spring back up to reconnect the shock absorber. So anyway, I'll get these out and get the new ones in. I'll let you know how that goes and the best way to do it, and then we'll look at compressing the new springs and reconnecting the shocks, and then you're nearly there, guys. The spring is out, as you can see here. So what I found really does help is, sorry about the camera work, but I'm on the floor and it's raining. Not the best day for this job. So imagine the spring in position. I twisted it like that, where it wasn't, sort of twisted it out, and it sort of pops out. It worked dead well. So hopefully I can twist it back in a similar fashion. Now, when you pull the spring out, you're going to be left with this rubber mount that might stay on, but it'll probably come off with the spring. It's just basically to dampen the spring, so it's not metal on metal. This one goes on the bottom, the bigger one. As you can see here, you've got these little grooves where the sort of spring sits in. You'll get your new one, and we'll sort of coil it the bottom to sit, you know, in that groove. I'll get that on properly in a minute and show you again. And then the smaller rubber mount you can see in the background over here, that pops on the top in the same way. You can sort of twist it on, which I'll do in a minute with two hands. Once you've got them two on, we can look at getting the new one on. I'm going to sort of slot it up into position first, up there, and as you can see, that one will go on quite easy because I've got the clearance on this side. Once I've got this on, you don't want to try and do your shock absorber up until you've got the other side on as well, and then we'll look at jacking it back up, tension the spring and bolt the shocks back on, and that's your job nearly done. So remember to replace your rubber dampers on the top and bottom of the spring, and then to get the spring back on, go top in first, and then if it doesn't slide over that, you can do a bit of the old sort of twisting round, you know, see how it starts there. Use the fact it's a spring for your advantage to help you twist it into position like that, just as I twisted it out like that. Hopefully that makes a bit of sense. So guys, crack on with that, get the new spring on, and then we'll look at getting the shocks back on. We have the springs on. I'm pleased to say it's quite an easy job, that. Definitely something you should try yourself at home. As you can see here, new spring in position, and on this side I'm going to show you how to get your shock back on. This is why it's good to have a spare jack. Like I say, don't worry if you only have one jack. Jack the car up first and prop it up like I've done over there. Just found a bit on the frame where it's nice and sturdy. I'm lucky because I've got two jacks, so I've been able to manoeuvre it up and down to suit. But prop it up nice and high first, and then pull your jack back out and use your jack to prop it up a bit higher if you need to get the old spring out if it's still a bit tight. And then you can use the same jack to do what I'm doing now. So I've put the spring in position, got the rubbers on the bottom and on the top. made sure it's all lined up properly where it's meant to go. You know, just twist them about a bit until it sits nicely. And then I've got the jack just underneath the sort of strut that the spring sits on. And as you can see here, we've still got a big gap from the bottom of the shock to the bracket it sits in. So, with a bit of jacking up, you'll be able to see I can then jack the spring back tight into position with the shock. That should be about right. And there you go, ready to put the bolt in, bolt it back up, do the same on the other side, and that's your new springs fitted. Dead easy job, guys. So just a quick recap: prop the car up, use your jack to get it up, and then prop it up so you've got your jack free. Get under the car, undo the 14mm bolt that goes through this shock absorber just at the bottom. Undo that both sides, and be aware that this wheel is going to drop down when you undo it, so put some under the wheel just as you undo it, and then you can lower it down slowly so nothing falls on you. Get both bolts out of both sides so the whole back end drops and the wheels are then touching the floor with the car obviously still propped up, which will give you enough slack on the spring itself to twist it out. You know, with a spring you twist it a certain way, it uncoils and coils itself, so if you twist it out it helps pop it out. You don't have to, but it does help a lot. Make sure to change both rubbers, or if you're getting new bushes or rubbers, put your new ones on. I've just used the old ones that were on it because there's nothing wrong with them. Still nice and soft and doing the job really. It's just so it's not metal on metal. Get your new springs in, make sure they're lined up properly, the right mounting points, and then side at a time you can jack it up under the bottom of the spring to get your suspension, to get your shock absorber, should I say, back into position with its bracket. And then in a second I'm going to put that bolt back through, tighten it back up nice and tight. You know, don't have to hang off the bar, but nip it up good. If you want proper torque ratings for that, let me know in the comments and I'll give you them. But that's about it for this video. How to remove and replace the rear springs or rear suspension on an Alfa Romeo Mito. This one's a 1.4 petrol turbo, but I think all the Mito chassis are very similar, so unless you've got a fancy sport one, they should all be the same as this on the back suspension.